Love with the cocoa. Ugh, I'm tired. Let me make sure this is working. Alright, we're good.
You're good.
We good. We in there.
Yep, you're good. You're
Yep.
good.
Pew.
Pew, 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 pew. Whee!
Like a 5-year-old.
I know. I love this tweet from this account at Not Cronin. Doug Waite hates me. Don't know what it means, but it just caught me funny. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh,
Dun, dun,
you're gonna be
dun,
disappointed
dun, dun.
today then.
I always dance to that.
You're gonna be disappointed today then.
I'm so glad Data got fired though. He should have.
I don't even know what he did. I know like
He was harassing women through. He was basically saying to women through DM that he was an amateur photographer, and if they would let him photograph them, like really creepy stuff, man. Really seriously creepy stuff.
that's interesting.
Yeah. Why would you do that? I mean, you're a Denver Post writer. I mean, even if it doesn't even matter that. It doesn't even matter that what you write for. I mean, we'll talk about it later if we want. But to me, it's the epitome of stupid. I mean, you're not gonna get away with it. You just nothing in this world today of social media is private, whether you think it is or not. It's just stupid and asinine. I don't get it.
Oh,
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. Do you what do you call it? You think we get Brodor Saturday?
Yes.
I
In
hope
my
so,
opinion.
because he's never been terribly good against us, so I don't mind that.
And here's a senior studio anchor for the Colorado Avalanche saying, Adrian Dater is a person, a husband, a friend to many. Be careful to judge. Best of luck. That's interesting. That's an interesting...
Alright. We got some people in here. We'll be ready to go in a minute. I gotta pull up some box scores.
Really? You don't know it by heart? You're terrible. You're
Yeah,
the
no,
worst
yeah,
podcast director ever.
yeah, I know. I know all the box scores by heart, including time on ice.
Worst podcast director ever.
Yeah. Whatever. At least I'm here today.
This is true.
it's an improvement over the past couple of weeks.
Does anyone still use a VCR? No. Silly
I
question.
don't, but I know people that do.
No, you don't.
I swear to God.
Those people need to be unfriended immediately.
First of all, I still have like Lion King on VHS, and I will watch it with my VCR one day if I have to.
All right.
I'd prefer not to.
That's awesome.
It is my favorite movie ever, though. I can't believe I just admitted that.
The circle of life.
All right, let's do this. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Ugh.
Boychuk to center point, skates the line, switches places with Letty. 10 on the power play. Boychuk shovels it behind the net for Strome. Strome in the left wing corner. Carries to the half wall. Above the left circle. Tavares right dot. Fakes the shot. Comes into the slot. Shoots. They score! The overtime. 3-2 is the final, and they are mobbing John Tavares in the high slot. Right wing for John Tavares, too far out in front of him, and now Tavares with pressure on Mark Stahl calls a turnover. Oposo shoots and scores! Kyle Oposo's 100th goal in the NHL gives the Islanders their first lead of the night, 3-2 in the opening minute of period 3.
All your New York Islanders news and expert Islanders analysis from the fourth line in Bridgeport to the first line in Long Island. This is the Dump and Chase podcast. All right, hello everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Dump and Chase podcast. Nice new intro we have going there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I spent a good amount of time on it over the weekend. That was Chris King with the goal calls on WRHU, Radio Hofstra University. And I enjoyed putting that together, so I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. As always, I am Shane Blackburn. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneBNHL. And with me today, Andy Graziano, who you could follow on Twitter at Tasman19. Unfortunately, Rich Diaz Rodriguez at RDNHL could not be with us tonight, but you have me and Andy with you for the next hour or so, and we're going to discuss the 18-7-0 New York Islanders. When was the last time we had 18 wins before the month of January?
Well, for me, I mean, I can remember a time, but not many fans in this generation obviously can. It's been 2 decades of waiting, wanting, screaming, yelling, shouting, pouting, slamming, throwing. But good for them. They deserve a team that is this good. But I agree with you. I wrote in my post-game wrap-up last night after the win in overtime against Ottawa that if I would have placed money on the Islanders being not only 18-7 through 25 games, but 10-2 at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, if I would have placed money on those odds in Vegas prior to the season, I would be a very, very rich man. And I don't think even Nostradamus would have been as bold as to make such a prediction. So
You'd also probably be in a straitjacket somewhere.
Yes, and I'm not advocating betting on sports, children. Please keep the money in the wallet. You don't want to get mixed up with that crowd.
All right, so 18-7-0, the New York Islanders so far this season. The last night's game against Ottawa, I want to start there just for a second because I do want to say that the sign of a good team is when you find ways to win when you don't play well.
Yep.
And that's what they did last night. They played well at the beginning. They outshot the Senators. They were out-pressuring them, out-skating them. But they didn't have their best game, and they let Ottawa climb back into it, and it was much closer than I feel it could have and should have been for the Islanders. But the sign of a good team is a team that still grinds out a win against another team when you're not playing your best game, and that's exactly what they did. They faced a goalie who was extremely good all game, only 1 weak goal, and it didn't count. So the Islanders showed that they are a good team because they were able to turn around and still pull out a win last night against Ottawa, which for a while there it was looking like it was going to be last year's Islanders and we were going to give up the lead in the third and not even make it to overtime.
You know, I think last night's game for me was it was actually I didn't have a problem with their game through the first 2 periods. I honestly didn't. I thought the first period they were good. I mean, yes, they were down in puck possession. If you look at the advanced stats, that some people like to do, some people don't like to do. But if you did, the first period was basically just Craig Anderson. The absolute highway robbery on Ryan Strome kept it from being a 1-1 game. Second period, the Islanders spent almost the whole period in the Ottawa zone pressuring and finally got the gift goal for Brock Nelson late in the second period, his team leading 11th off of the flub at center ice. So through 2 periods, I thought they were okay. They come out in the third. Jack Capuano makes a brilliant adjustment, pairing John Tavares with Ryan Strome to begin the 4-on-4 sequence. And they work some magic in the offensive zone that leads to Thomas Hickey, who was activating all night, setting up Strome for the go-ahead goal. And then right at that point, to your point, is where I think everything went downhill for them. They got Ottawa rode a momentum shift and really came on strong. And The Islanders had a lot of trouble clearing the puck, which, as you said, was reminiscent of prior years' teams. Calvin DeHaan got his pocket picked as he basically skated into a 2-on-1 behind the net. And I'll tell you, DeHaan hasn't been playing his best hockey this year, in my opinion. I thought last year he was much better, and I expect him to be much better this year. I think he's working through some kinks in his game. But I think from that point it was basically just survival mode until they got into overtime, which is going to be classified now as Islanders time, I guess. They're 3-0 in overtime and 5-0 in shootouts. They still haven't lost when tied after regulation. And then that's where Thomas Hickey again just went to work and puts the puck in a dangerous area, and good things happen. Islanders get a little puck luck, and bounces off of Mark Mathot's skate, who was covering Grabowski in front, and another 2 points in the standings.
Looking at that goal, it's not how it went in that impressed me. It was the play Hickey made, that he had his head up and he realized when he got the puck at the blue line that his team was changing. The Islanders were making a change, and he knew if he just threw it back in, it would have just gone to Ottawa and they would have had to come back the other way. So he made that nice little spin move and brought it down behind the net and just threw it to the net. And that's the perfect example of what you tell young kids when they're starting to learn how to play hockey. Throw the puck at the net and good things will happen. You're not going to score throwing it against the boards. Right,
Shane, as a coach, right? I know I've screamed from the bench plenty of times, eat it, eat it, eat it. What that means basically is eat the puck in the corner. It means, and that's basically what Hickey's plan was if he faced any resistance coming down the right wing boards as he circled around the corner behind the net. If he would have faced any resistance, he would have ate the puck and allowed his team to complete the change. So yeah, you're right. It was just a brilliant play by Hickey all around. When he saw the space, he obviously took advantage of it, and Ottawa was very lax in their coverage, and it cost him a point.
I think I'm not alone when I thought Grabowski scored that goal at first until they showed the replay. But
I don't really care who scores it. I just know that once it went in, I was just relieved that we got the extra point. It didn't matter who scored it for me. I mean, what matters to me is that they're a point out of first place in the NHL. They're a point behind Tampa with a game in hand. They have the most wins in the NHL. They're 10 points clear of third place in the Metropolitan Division. That is over the rival New York Rangers, who have one game in hand. As we talked about last week on the show, these are very, very important points that they're putting in the bank. And after the game, I kind of thought to myself, wow, the one thing that I wish they were doing a little more of, and I basically, when I looked at the numbers, I realized that they're doing a fine job of it, is winning in regulation. Because as the first, the tiebreaker when all the teams are even in games played is wins, and then regulation wins. Regulation and overtime wins, excluding shootout.
Just avoiding the shootout.
Right, and the Islanders have 13 of 18 in regulation or overtime. So that basically places them in the entire league. The only teams that have more is Vancouver with 15, Pittsburgh with 15, and Tampa Bay with 16. So they're in really, really fabulous shape through 25 games.
And I think it's a combination of a lot of things, Andy, that have them there. I think it's a combination of good defense, good offense, and, of course, outstanding goaltending, especially from Halak lately. 10 in a row, tying Billy Smith's record. A chance to break it, whether he plays tomorrow night in Ottawa or Saturday night at home against St. Louis. He has a chance to break that record and go 11 straight starts with a win.
Yep.
His an unreal, and it was mentioned in this podcast in an earlier episode that he would eventually make his way back up to his average. He may not have been at his average when we first started playing, but everything would work itself out, and I think it finally has come around for him and for the Islanders, and it's paid dividends. But talking about the defense, there's some negative that we have to talk about with the defense, and that's the injury bug hitting the Islanders' blue line pretty hard. Boychuk and Wisnowski both placed on the injured reserve list. Hopefully not long-term. Hopefully it's a short-term thing, some rest, and just to preserve them for what will hopefully be a deep playoff run this season. You don't want to force them to stay out and play 25 games into the season if all it's going to do is make them less effective 75 games into the season.
Well, it is thought to be short-term, Shane. They were retroactive moves to November 27th and November 28th, respectively. Meaning they have to miss tomorrow's game, and they'll more than likely miss Saturday's afternoon tilt with St. Louis. But It is said to be short-term with Griffin Reinhart coming up. That's really just insurance, I believe, in case Travis Hamonic, who's day-to-day with what's being called an upper body injury, which we all know is a shoulder, can't go tomorrow night. If Hamonic can't go tomorrow night, then you'll see Donovan, Straight, and Reinhart in the lineup. But I truly believe that if Hamonic's okay, then Reinhart sits and is really just here for insurance purposes, and it also opens up that roster spot to get Michael Grabner back in the lineup tomorrow night in place of the injured Cal Clutterbuck, who's also considered day-to-day with a lower body injury, which is said to be a muscle-type injury of some sort, hamstring, groin, not a knee. And just so people know, Lubomir Visnovsky and Johnny Boychuk are working out off the ice, so it's not. Don't worry about head concussion-related injury. It is not that. And as I said, I think both players could be back in the lineup next week.
Well, it looks like Capuano's going to have an easier decision to make now when it comes to what to do with Grabner when he comes back, since he is down a forward. You could just plug him into the lineup, whether you put him on that fourth line where I thought he belonged anyway in place of Clutterbuck, or you find another place for him and move another forward like a Josh Bailey around. But it'll be interesting to see what the decisions that are made are tomorrow night and Saturday night at home.
Well, today Josh Bailey took a maintenance day, so Grabner was actually skating on that second unit with Franz Nielsen and Mikhail Grabowski, so that could be a very, very interesting line.
Which let's use second unit very loosely because in my opinion, the kid line is our first line. Second line is Tavares, Okposo, and Kulemin, and then number three.
I don't even like to use first. I don't even like to use first, second, third, or fourth lines. I always look at ice time as a harbinger of where players are in the pecking order, and obviously you have your first line to which again, quote unquote, first line of Tavares, Okposo, and Nikolai Kulemin who play 18 to 20 minutes per night, and then you have your middle lines who are roughly in the 13 to 16 range, and then you have your Cizikas, Clutterbuck, and Martin line that plays roughly 10 to 12. So it's always safe to look at things in an ice time perspective rather than who's your first, second, third, and fourth line. I agree with you there.
Can we just talk for a minute about John Tavares?
Oh, we can, sure.
Okay.
Because I would like to.
I was very, very, very hard on John Tavares earlier on in this season.
I was as well.
And I'm not afraid to admit it because I think I was justified in it. He was not the John Tavares we were expecting to see, which, by the way, I just realized I have to change these goal and point totals. We've played 5 games since I updated them.
I want to take care of that.
But John Tavares has improved, in my opinion, tremendously from the beginning of the season, and you could see it in the way he skates and the way he plays. I think he's no longer afraid of his knee. I think he has decided that his knee is strong enough to support the way he wants to play. He no longer seems to favor one side. He lowers his shoulder, he drives into the corner, and he controls the puck better. I think whatever was keeping his head from allowing him to be the player he is dissipating and almost entirely gone, because he might not have lit up the scoreboard the past couple of games, but he has been noticeably and tremendously better than he was in the beginning of the season, and that is a huge plus for a team that's already 18-7 with a bunch of positive momentum going their way.
Yeah, I think Tavares lately has been just an absolute bull on the puck. He's been, kind of using his will, so to speak, in the offensive zone more, and just really just pulling himself into advantageous scoring positions and setting up his teammates. And I think maybe it's finally sunk into John that he's not the guy anymore. He doesn't, and that's not to say that he's not the best player on the team, because he
doesn't have to be the whole
He doesn't
team.
have to be the guy anymore. There's plenty of complementary depth on this team, offensively especially, that can kind of take the burden off of Tavares. So I think that might have been what's finally sinking in, and now we're seeing just steady, consistent play game to game. Even though I'd still like to see him take over games more, I believe. And if that's the only complaint that I have about John Tavares, and that's really a good complaint to have.
Yes.
I'd like to see, where he just absolutely is dominating the other team, like just toying with them. And I think there's no question that he has the skill to do that. But mentally, I think that it's finally getting through that he doesn't have to be the guy anymore.
By the way, guys, the questions and answers part of this Dump and Chase podcast is open. So if you guys have any questions you'd like to ask or any comments you'd like to make, the questions and answers section is open. So feel free to go ahead and do that. Let's talk about the kid line though.
The kid line.
Because the kid line, I mean, everyone knows that I'm a huge fan of Brock Nelson, but that kid line as a whole has been, in my opinion, the best all-around line that we have. Ryan Strome has proved tenfold that he belongs in the NHL. He needs no more seasoning in the AHL level. He is strong on the puck, which he wasn't entirely last season. He doesn't get knocked off of it as easily as he was in last season and early on in this season, but he's strong on the puck. His vision is second to almost none. He sees the ice incredibly well. He makes passes that not only most hockey fans and players wouldn't notice, but that other high-level players wouldn't notice. His vision is incredible, which complements Brock Nelson's ability to finish and drive hard to the net. And Anders Lee just rounds that line out by being an absolute bull in a china shop.
Anders Lee is currently, and again, if I can mention advanced stats for a second so people just hang with me if you don't like them. Anders Lee is currently leading the Islanders in 5-on-5 Fenwick close percentage, which means that when the game is close within one goal and in the late stages, Anders Lee is actually the best possession player 5-on-5 for the Islanders right now. And I think that says a lot about his maturity level. Ryan Strome is a whole other story. I was extremely hard on Ryan in training camp as I felt it was justified. I think Strome came in and kind of thought that the job was just his and he didn't have to work for it. And I think that head coach Jack Capuano saw that as well because Strome got a grilling out with about a week and a half left in camp, which I think turned everything around for him. But I think that nobody should have expected Ryan Strome to be a huge goal scorer because that's not even what he was in his amateur career. He's a setup guy. He's an assist guy. And I think that we're seeing that in terms, every time he touches the puck, he's dangerous in setting up his teammates. And you're right, Shane. The strength is noticeably there. The puck control is noticeably there. Most importantly, the confidence is noticeably there. When goals are scored with Ryan Strome on the ice, he has a hand in the scoring in 83% of them. Either the primary goal, primary or secondary assist, in 83% of the goals scored when he's on the ice, which is just unbelievable. So yeah, Strome has come a long way, and he's basically turned it around from training camp in a big way. And I think you're right. This guy's going to be a force for a long, long time.
Well, if you look at that kid line, Andy, Nelson is 11 goals, 11 assists for 22 points. Strome, 5-13 for 18, and then Lee rounds out the bottom of that line at 5 goals, 1 assist for 6 points. But they're all positive in plus-minus. Strome, second in the team at +8, only behind Nick Leddy, who I think has been the most underrated addition to the team. He's been phenomenal. Nelson right behind Strome +7 and Lee +3. So the three of them have been phenomenal as a unit all season. I think they play the game extremely well. They play Islanders hockey, and I absolutely love every time they step foot on the ice. And I was a little worried that Grabner was going to force one of them out of the lineup. As of right now, we see it's going to be Clutterbuck probably for tomorrow night. So my heart could rest one more night. But I would hate to see that line broken up because I think that line is, right now, that line is our best line on the ice on any given night.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're becoming a force every single shift, and it's funny you said before that you consider them the first line, and I really don't think that's too far off at this point. But again, I think it goes to speak to the depth of this team. It's just absolutely unbelievable. The offensive depth. we got to see how the injury ninja has to stay away from the forwards, in my opinion. I mean, it'd be nice if he stayed away from the whole team, but if you look around the league, the Devils lost 3 players last night in one game: Jaromir Jagr, Patrick Elias, and Steven Gianta. The Penguins just recently lost Chris Kunitz and Chris Letang. He is just doing work this year, just really affecting big players. Now, right now, we have a situation on the blue line, obviously, with Hamonic, Boychuk, and Wisnowski. At forward, it's really just Clutterbuck that's banged up, and you have to hope it stays that way, because I don't feel that we have the depth to survive 2 or 3 injuries at forward like we do on defense. You know, Matt Donovan's been really, really solid since coming back into the lineup, since being a chance to be put into the lineup, and I think he's earned it. Brian Straight, the last 2 games, has been much better. You can read into that what you will, but he's been much better than he has been all season. So, and then still waiting in Bridgeport, you have Ryan Pulak, you have Scott Mayfield. They just brought up Griffin Reinhart today, who I don't feel is ready, but we'll see. So again, I just, that injury ninja has to stay away from those forwards.
Oh, right now it's affecting the defense, so I'm a little worried about the injury bug, but hopefully it does avoid. Zachariah in the questions and answers asks, starting to see why Strome was 5th overall, going to be a superstar. What does Fenwick stand for?
Zach, just so you know, I mean, advanced stats were created to kind of judge possession. Basically, if a team is possessing the puck, obviously it makes them harder to beat. That's pretty much common sense. So these advanced metrics were created for that purpose. The Corsi number is basically takes into account, it's basically like a plus-minus, but it's a plus-minus for shot attempts. So goals, saves, shots that miss the net, and shots that are blocked. Fenwick is basically the same thing, but it's taking out blocked shots. And basically the reason they take blocked shots out of Fenwick is because they believe that shot blocking is something that a player can directly impact by blocking a shot. So basically, Corsi is plus-minus of all shot attempts. Fenwick is the same thing, minus blocked shots. And PDO, which I feel is very important, that's the shooting percentage plus save percentage. And you really ideally want to be around a 1 when you add those 2 numbers up. What that means is if a team is like a 1-3, like the Pittsburgh Penguins are right now, that shows that they're getting some luck, because the advanced statistic creators, if I'll call them that, I don't know what else to call them, they look at save percentage and shooting percentage as really like values of luck, right? I mean, it's a lot of it's luck driven. You always see if a guy's shooting 25%, well, that's going to regress. He's not going to shoot 25% all season, right? He's not going to score that many goals on that little shots. So what PDO is, when it adds those 2 numbers together, the Penguins right now are like a 1-3, I believe, which means that they're getting some luck. There's some luck in that record. The Islanders are right at .997. It's been creeping up a little bit to that 1 average lately, which basically can tell you that the Islanders' 18-7 record is not directly attributable to just luck, and that's a very good sign. So I hope that helped explain it.
And Zachariah had one more question. He said, trade Bailey to make room for Grabner. I don't know about that. I think Bailey has been one of the better all-around Islanders. He may not be lighting up the score sheet night in and night out, but he has been good possession-wise. He's good entering the zone with the puck. He controls the puck well. He does the little things right. Plus, if you're going to trade either one of them, Grabner gets you more value in a return.
The trade market right now, I don't think there's much out there for Garth Snow to do. Let's face it. Unless Snow is looking to get back into the 1st or 2nd round in the 2015 NHL entry draft, there's really not many players that he's going to be able to bring back, especially for Josh Bailey with a $3.3 million per year contract. And I don't think they're going to move Bailey for a draft pick. And I don't think they'd get a 1st or a 2nd for Bailey right now anyway in terms of his offensive numbers. Advanced metrics, you're right, Shane, say that he's very good defensively, and the coaching staff is still in love/infatuated with him to the point where I don't see that being likely. Could Bailey be scratched every now and then as a healthy scratch? Sure, but actually trading him, I don't see that as a possibility right now.
When you watch Josh Bailey with the eye test, he does everything right up until he gets the opportunity to score. He really does. He makes the plays in the corner. He makes the plays along the boards. He makes the right passes in the neutral zone. He does everything right up until that moment when he has the opportunity to score, and then I don't know what happens, but his brain and his hands don't communicate correctly.
He doesn't shoot
and
enough.
It all falls apart.
He
and he has a shot.
Enough.
We've seen his shot.
Yeah. His forecheck is good. He gets in on the forecheck. He works his tail off in the neutral zone. He's good in coverage in the defensive zone. He's been giving the puck away a lot less than he used to early in his career. So yeah, I mean, like I said, all those factors make him a useful third or fourth line player. I think the problem with Josh Bailey is when you try moving him up into that 17 to 20 minute per game range, that's where he becomes, I believe, less useful. I think that Josh in a 13-minute to 14-minute range could be a very useful player for this club.
Which is why I think essentially and ideally our first line is the Tavares line, our second line is the Kid line, and our third line is Nielsen, Grabowski, and Bailey.
And that, right, if you can't see the depth in what you just said, then you're just not looking.
And then my ideal fourth line the next couple of weeks, if Clutterbuck isn't injured long term, is Clutterbuck, Cizikas, and Grabner. And I know people don't necessarily agree with me on that point, but I think that makes our fourth line even more deadly and even better of a fourth line than it is right now. And I love Matt Martin. It's nothing against Matt Martin. I love Matt Martin. I like the way he plays. I like that he goes out and defends. And I think he definitely was a fan favorite. I'm not sure what's going on right now with Matt Martin and the fan favorite talk, because every once in a while you see, oh my God, we love Matt Martin, and then the next game you see, why is he on the ice? But nothing against Matt Martin. I just think that Grabner would fit into that role with his speed. Cizikas is way faster than anyone gives him credit for. He's also a much better hockey player, I think, than a lot of people give him credit for. And we've seen what Clutterbuck can do. I think that is a very dangerous fourth line, if that is the case.
I did a column on Sunday off of Saturday night's game about that fourth line playing the Islander way, as Jack Capuano has trademarked this year. The Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck line. I talked to Casey in the locker room post game on Saturday, and that gave me the quotes that I needed for the column. But I don't think Matt Martin's a possibility for coming out of the lineup. I think he's doing work this year. He's doing a lot of the hard work on the boards. He's really the only Islander outside of Clutterbuck who, as we've discussed, is really banged up right now, that takes the body. And let's speak to that for a second, because I would have loved to have seen a response after Chris Neal just plastered Travis Hamonic last night. And when was the last time that you remember an Islander, quote-unquote, plastering an opponent into the boards? I can't even remember, and I say this to myself every game, I can't remember the last, quote-unquote, huge hit I've seen an Islander throw. And
Andy Sutton hit a Ranger like 4 years ago.
That's what I mean, exactly. I mean, they're going to need that part of their game, and I think for that reason, I don't think there's much of a chance of Matt Martin coming out of the lineup, because it's just something I think you need to see. When you're down 2-1, 2-0, 3-1, that can turn a game. We've seen it. We've seen that start the momentum train going and feed it that coal that it needs to just chug along, and it can lead a team to a complete reversal of fortune from what had happened earlier in a hockey game. And every game I say to myself, when was the last? I see our guys get plastered, and I'm like, when was the last time we plastered somebody? I can't remember last time I tweeted about a huge hit that an Islander threw.
Well, if you think that's the case, then I know I'm not an NHL coach, but in my opinion, the only thing you could do is platoon Bailey and Grabner. I would be very disappointed if you break up the Kid line. Grabner does not belong with Tavares and Okposo. I know there are people who feel he does. In my honest opinion, Grabner does not belong on that line. Yes, his speed may open up the ice a little bit more for Tavares, but once that initial rush is over, Grabner is all but useless with the two of them on the ice. Which is why I like Coulomb in there, so I don't see them doing that. And then the only other, you're not, unless you platoon him and Grabowski, but I don't think you spent the money you spent on Grabowski in the offseason to platoon him with Grabner.
You know, Grabner did have. Well, when was it? Last year or was it the year before that they had Grabner for a little bit playing with Tavares?
I think it was last year for a little bit.
Was it last year for a little bit? I thought it was actually pretty good from what I remember.
You know what it is with him, Andy? He brings the speed to that line that opens up the ice a little bit for Tavares to gain some room. But once that initial rush is over, what does he do in the offensive zone? Think back the last 2 or 3 seasons and tell me, besides breakaways that he has, what does Grabner do in the offensive zone? And that's what Tavares needs. He needs someone who he can come out of the corner and set up, or that he's not afraid to cycle with. And Kuhlman and Okposo have given him that, but I think Grabner just takes too much offensive skill off of that line. That's my opinion.
True. I mean, you'd kind of like to see. You'd like to see Kuhlman get a little more offensive. I mean, that's where it that's where it comes into play. Where your best player has to make the players with him better, right? I mean, John Tavares is a fantastic hockey player. Kyle Okposo has obviously come on and is a beast in his own right. But you'd like to see Tavares maybe. Not make Kuhlman better, but kind of. I'm surprised I haven't seen more offensive opportunities, let me say, come Kuhlman's way as a result of playing with those two.
But I think Kuhlman does the important job on that line of being defensively responsible, because Tavares and Okposo are almost as bad as the Ovechkin disappearing defensively meme. I mean, listen.
I don't know if anything will ever be as bad as that.
Listen, you guys can get as mad as me you want for what I'm about to say. We have 2 forwards. 2. On the entire roster, we have 2 forwards who are negative plus minus. One I think you can guess.
I hate plus minus.
One is Matt Martin. And you know who the second is?
Go ahead. Give it to me.
The second is John Tavares.
Wow.
He's -4. He has 23 points, and he's -4.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't care that my superstar offensive center is a -4. Because again, plus minus is a little bit for me below hits as a valid NHL stat.
But what I'm saying is Kuhlman brings the defensive responsibility that has made that line better defensively. That line was not good in the defensive. That line was not good in the defensive zone.
Definitely. Zach says Viz hip checked the Dallas Star this season. Must have not have been that memorable because I don't remember it. And it's Wisniewski, so let's. I mean, he's not noted for that.
He might have fallen into him.
Right. Chad makes a good point. Isles aren't throwing huge hits because they have the puck most of the time. That is true. Their possession stats are very good, and that is a semi-valid point. But there have been opportunities, even though they are possessing the puck most of the time. There have been opportunities where. I'd like to see some of it, just some of it. I'm not saying I want them to go out and become the late '70s Philadelphia Flyers, but I want to see some of it.
There's also one thing about the hits that I'm not a huge fan of either, and that is there were a couple of times where Matt Martin could have just picked the puck up and walked out to the middle of the ice.
Yep.
But still he tried to throw that hit, which I mean, I love hits. I'll sit on YouTube and I'll watch. Hit highlights all night, but there are times where it's not necessary.
It's so arbitrary, I sit in the press box, and at the end of the first period, I walk to the press box lounge, and I pass by the NHL.com statisticians who were tracking the game, every little nuance about the game, shots, where the shot was taken, all the stats and the shot attempts and blocked shots, missed shots, face-offs, all that good stuff. And I'm sometimes wondering if the 60% of the time that Matt Martin goes in for a hit and hits the boards,
do they count that as a hit?
If it's just so loud and ominous sounding that they just count that as a hit.
But at the same time, I forget who
you would think.
I forget who I tweeted this at during the game last night. But with that being in that same vein, when Matt Martin threw that hit and hit 2 guys last night on Ottawa, does he get credit for 2 hits or 1?
When what? Say that again. I apologize.
Last night during the game when the 2 Ottawa guys came up the boards and Matt Martin hit both of them. He hit one. Does he get credit for 2 hits?
Right. I don't know.
Or does the guy he hit get credit for hitting the other guy?
I really, really don't know.
But
that's a very good question. That's a very good.
I was kind of hoping he would. Let's
Maybe
look
he
ahead
does.
really quick.
You know what?
Here,
I might have to ask one of those because I'm actually getting kind of friendly with one of them. So I may have to actually Saturday's game. I may actually have to ask one of them the theory on how they count the said hit statistic, and maybe get some inside info for all the listeners of the Dump and Chase podcast for our next show.
I just lost my train of thought. No, here we go. I want to look ahead for a second because we have a couple of interesting games coming up. We have Ottawa tomorrow night again in what this is 3 back-to-backs we've had this season against the same team. We did it Pittsburgh home and home. We did Washington home and home, and now we're doing Ottawa home and home, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
So this is the third home and home back-to-back. Well, it's not. This one's not back-to-back, but the third home and home without a game in between that we've had so far this season.
Right.
We were 2-0 against the Penguins, which were 2 of the best games I've watched all season, and that is, in my opinion, a better rivalry than the Islanders-Rangers. Then we went 1-1 with Washington, although that easily could have been 2-0. And currently we are 1-0 against Ottawa. So we play them tomorrow night. Is there anything you're looking for tomorrow night, Andy, from this game that the Islanders need to do to come out 2-0 in this home and home?
I just got my mind focused on one thing. Go into Ottawa and make sure you get a point. Am I going to throw myself off of the Verrazano Bridge on my way to the Coliseum Saturday if they don't? No. But I just think that you're going on the road, like I said, second half of a back-to-back against a team that kind of rolled over you in the third period last night. I think it's important to come out and make sure you grab a point. And I think they'll do that. There are question marks on defense. You have to hope, I think, that Travis Hamonic can make the game. I think if you go with a 6-man unit and you're talking about, and again, this is not to take anything away from Matt Donovan, Brian Straight, or Griffin Reinhart, but those 3 haven't played together an awful lot this year. Donovan just got himself back into the lineup, and while he's played really, really well so far, that's going to be a tough proposition to go into Ottawa with those 3 in the lineup and pull out 2 points. But look, that's what Garth Snow has done. He's built this team around depth. Now the depth is going to have to come through. This is when it's needed, and this is when it has to produce. So let's see what these guys can do. Just for the record, I didn't like what I saw in last year's camp, didn't like what I saw in this year's camp, and didn't like what I saw in the brief audition so far for Griffin Reinhart. I think that he looks very, very slow in reacting to the speed of the game. He went down to Bridgeport, and in 15 games with the Sound Tigers is a -8. So there are some issues that he needs to grow into his game still. And I'm not trashing Griffin Reinhart and saying he's going to be a horrible player. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is we've talked about how tough it is to develop as a defenseman in the National Hockey League and how much longer it takes over a forward's development in the league. And I think that Griffin Reinhart needs the time to properly develop. I don't think he's ready for NHL action right now. I really don't.
Well, after the Ottawa game, Andy, we come back home, a game that I'm going to be at, which I'm really excited about. 1 o'clock start, which, by the way, tomorrow night is a rare 7:30 start in Ottawa, so just make sure you guys are prepared for that. Make sure you guys aren't rushing home for a 7 o'clock start just to realize that they don't start till 7:30. Tomorrow's a rare 7:30 start, but after that, a 1 p.m. matinee, the Islanders will play host to the St. Louis Blues. We all know what happened last time the Islanders and the Blues played a matinee game at the Coliseum. I'll give you a hint. Vanek didn't kick it. There is no Thomas Vanek right now, who, by the way, I haven't checked at the stats today, but last check, Casey Cizikas had more goals than Thomas Vanek this season.
But there is a Martin Brodeur.
But there is a resurgence of Martin Brodeur, and the question is, will we see him Saturday afternoon against St. Louis? Brodeur doesn't have the greatest track record against the New York Islanders. It always seems whenever we played the Devils, I'd turn on the game and we'd be chasing Brodeur out of the net. I don't know what it is, but we just seem to have his number regardless of how great of a goalie he always was. And by the way, I didn't turn on the Chicago-St. Louis game. I probably will when we finish here, but it is going to look so weird to see Marty Brodeur in anything other than black, red, and white.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be worse than Modano not being a star and Alfredson not being a Senator. This one is bad for me.
I never wanted to see. I always thought Brodeur should have retired in that jersey. I agree with you, Shane. I don't think there's any other jersey that's going to look right on him. And seeing some pictures tonight out of Chicago, where the Blues and Blackhawks are facing off as we speak, it's still not right to me. But I have a really good feeling that we see him on Saturday. I think that regardless of the Islanders' success against him, the Blues are obviously going to want to get him into a game as soon as possible. And I think that comes on Saturday against the Islanders at the Nassau Coliseum. So it's going to make for a very interesting day, that's for sure. Too bad there's no morning skate for me anyway.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he plays. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of his season goes as a St. Louis Blue. Again, we're talking about Marty Brodeur being a St. Louis Blue, something never thought I would see him in anything else. But while we're on the black, white, and red, before we finish up, can we just talk about that hit last night?
We can. Let me just get to Zach's question real quick. Zach, Ryan Pulock has been the best. Reports out of Bridgeport. Michael Fernabeo does an excellent job covering the Sound Tigers. Has constantly said that Ryan Pulock has been the best player this year for Brent Thompson and the Sound Tigers. Now, whether that translates into NHL readiness, I don't know. Again, it's such a hard thing to judge with a defenseman. You look at guys who have struggled historically that are now really good players. Victor Hedman comes to mind for me, that just was really awful in his first 2 years and now is turning into an absolute stud. Adam Larson in New Jersey is really just finding his game now. So, again, they take so much longer to develop. To comment on Pulock's NHL readiness wouldn't be fair, but down in Bridgeport, he has been their best player and is doing very, very well. So he's coming along nicely.
And just before we get onto that hit, Andy, I do want to say anyone who thinks that Jack Capuano isn't a great coach and was very upset about the way he was coaching, just look at the Devils.
Whoa. Slow your roll there, kid.
I'm just saying. Look at the Devils, because all of my friends who are Devil fans despise Peter DeBoer.
And they shouldn't. It's actually funny you say that, Shane, because I was talking to a friend of mine at work today who's a diehard Devil fan. He's a good kid. Shout out to my buddy Joe Caballero. But I said the same thing. He was commenting on Peter DeBoer as well, and I was like, come on, you guys didn't hate him last year. You guys didn't hate him the year before. I said, I saw the guy on Saturday at the Coliseum, and he just looked like a train wreck. He looked defeated. And with all the injuries going on in New Jersey, he's got a goaltender who was supposed to come in and be a bona fide number one stud who has played anything but in Corey Schneider, and he just doesn't have much to work with. A very young, developing defense, tons of injuries at forward. It's a tough situation for DeBoer right now, but you have to think he's one of the first coaches on the hot seat at the current time.
I would agree with that 100%. Now, let's get to the discussion of the hour. That hit. Clean or dirty?
Well, I tweeted out this morning my thoughts prior to the NHL ruling that Bortuzzo did get 2 games for the hit. Prior to that, I tweeted out my thoughts this morning, and I thought he actually could have gotten 3 or 4 games for it. And, the principal point of contact is very, very hard to determine. I watched it like 50 times, slow-moed it, stopped it, paused it, did whatever I could to kind of try to determine if I can see a clear principal point of contact being the head. And I couldn't conclusively say that that's the case. What made the hit bad for me was the predatory nature of it. Jágr's coming down the right wing boards, being covered by the defenseman, who I'm not sure who the defenseman covering him was, but the defenseman had Jágr contained to the outside, going into the corner and around the boards, similar to the area that Thomas Hickey skated last night for his game winner. Bortuzzo literally came, as soon as he entered the defensive zone, Bortuzzo zeroed in on Jágr, to the point where right before the hit, Bortuzzo actually glides right past the man that he's supposed to be covering, the man that he should pick up. Just no regard for anything other than zeroing in and taking Yager out, in my opinion. And that, for me, is what made the hit suspension worthy, the absolute predatory nature of it.
And now, do you agree with the comments that were made after the game by, I believe it was Peter DeBoer, right? Who said he said if a hit like that were to happen to Crosby, it would have I thought it was a real liberty, totally unnecessary. If one of our guys did that too, and then in parentheses, Penguins captain Sidney, and then Crosby, there would be World War IV.
I think that if that happened to Sidney Crosby,
I think you're looking at at minimum 10-game suspension.
You're looking at a huge suspension. You're looking at a bench-clearing brawl. You're looking at protests that rival what's going on in Ferguson right now. Yeah, it would have been. I'm sorry to say that, as I'm trying to be an objective, analyst / journalist / blogger, whatever the hell you want to call me in this situation. But there's clearly a level of protection that's offered to guys like that, and with Jaromir Jagr's great success in this league, I don't see why he shouldn't be offered the same level of protection. And I'm not sure if a 2-game suspension, it kind of quells it for now. But again, what really caught me was just the absolute predatory nature of the way Bortuzzo just locked in on him. And I'm not sure about DeBoer's comment about World War IV. I think
could we just mention Zachariah's comment about that?
I don't see it. Where is it?
He said, "When was World War III?"
Well done, Zach. You're exactly right. I think Peter skipped a generation there.
That was good.
I hope Peter doesn't know something we don't know. He's not friends with Obama or something, is he? And he kind of knows something we don't know, like World War III is
coming.
Yeah, exactly. Well done. Well done. But what's your thoughts on it, Shane? I mean, you've been around the game a long time, like me. You've played it. You've coached it. You're a great analyst on this podcast. What do you think?
The hit itself, a penalty called on the ice. I would have liked to have seen one. Obviously, I'm trying to look at this objectively, the same you are, but I despise the Pittsburgh Penguins. But with that aside,
take that out of it. Yeah, try to take that out of it.
With that aside, I could understand how a penalty wasn't immediately called on the ice. The way the play happened, the positioning they were in, it wasn't clear cut that it should have been any kind of penalty right off the bat. The minute that it was seen on replay and slowed down, because at that point you can't go back and give a penalty.
Right.
It's done. Once the play's done, it's done. You can't turn around and say, "Oh, well, 5 minutes ago you did this," and we looked at the replay. Do I think that may come in the near future? Unfortunately, yes. I don't like that, but I do think there is a possibility that replays could be used to call penalties. But once that play is done and the replays are viewed by the league, it absolutely warranted a suspension. I think 2 was a little light. I do think it could have been anywheres from 4 to 6 in that range. I don't think it quite would have earned a 10-game suspension. All right. You there?
Yeah.
All right, we just gotta.
Did you lose all power?
I don't know what happened, but
What are you, Detroit?
yeah, right. Shit. All right,
Oh, whoa.
all right, we're back. All right, I apologize for that, guys. I have no idea what happened, but apparently I lost my connection to Andy and to you guys. So let's forget where I was. I was talking about the hit. I said something about penalties and hoopla and referees, but let's try and get back to where we were here. So. Initial hit right off the bat, I don't think a penalty necessarily had to have been called because I don't think a penalty. I think it could have been, but I don't think they were wrong in not calling it because of the speed and the situation in which the hit was made. After that, I do think it is the right call to suspend Bortuzzo. I do think it could have been more than 2 games. I could have been in the 4 to 6 range, not quite the 10 range. And I agree 100% that if it was Sidney Crosby, that it would have been a much different outcome than what happened in the game. I am slightly disappointed that no one on the Devils came out to defend Jaromir Jagr, and there wasn't more. And I don't mean to use retribution because I think retribution is too strong of a word in this situation, but I think there should have been more of a response from the Devils after that hit. Obviously, if it was Crosby, like you said, Andy, I think a bench clearing brawl was almost unavoidable. And I do think that whoever hit Crosby would have been upwards of 10 games. But I didn't like the hit. I think there was no reason for it. That is the kind of hit that the NHL is trying to get out of the game. That is the kind. I love hits. I love the NHL. I love the physicality. And don't quote me on this, but I love the violence of hockey. I do love the fighting. I love the big hits. I love the physical play of hockey. But that's a kind of hit that we don't need in the league, especially against someone of the stature of Jagr.
Right.
And not saying that hitting someone less skilled or who has been in the league a less amount of time is any better. But that's the kind of hit that this league doesn't need. That's the kind of hit they're trying to remove from the game, and that's the kind of hit that should be removed from the game. And a 2-game suspension isn't the way you get rid of that.
Yep. I got to say this, if you like if you like quick hitting GIFs on the internet that take a play and can really break it down into like 10 seconds or so and loop it. You have to follow at My Regular Face on Twitter.
Oh, she's fantastic.
She is absolutely unbelievable with what she does. What she does is she watches every game every night and breaks down stuff that you want to see into just a quick 5 to 10 second GIF and posts it on her Twitter feed. It's absolutely fantastic. So I would definitely suggest everyone go follow at My Regular Face on Twitter and keep up with all her GIFs because she really does fantastic work, and it's like watching highlights from every game around the league all night long. Yeah. You don't gotta wait for your NHL Tonight show and stuff like that. It's really good stuff.
I wasn't watching the game when Lee fought. I was on the bus, and she was able to get me a GIF of that fight, so I was able to see it. She's awesome. Great.
She does fantastic work. Definite must follow.
Andy Graziano at Tasman19. Yes. Is there anything you would like to plug, my friend?
Just, again, I say it every week, but it can't be understated. Thanks for listening. Thanks for reading. We appreciate all the support for Islanders Insight since we started this independent venture back in March. We've just grown every month, and we really enjoy doing what we're doing for you guys. And like I said, thanks for everything, and talk to you next week.
And I am Shane Blackburn. You can follow me at ShaneBNHL. I apologize for the technical difficulties and the disconnection between me and you guys there. I just made my job more difficult as now I have to edit that nice and gracefully and get it in there. I'll have to figure out a way to do that tonight. But again, thank you guys for listening. We enjoy all the feedback, and we enjoy doing this for you guys. We enjoy that you guys listen and enjoy us. I love talking about the Islanders. I know Andy and Rich do the same. Again, check out IslandersInsight.com, the DumpandChasePodcast.com. Follow us all on Twitter. If you have any questions you'd like answered on the show, feel free to listen live and come into the questions and answers app. If you can't come in live, feel free to tweet at us and just let us know that you like it, what you think we could do better, what you think we can change. anything you want to hear, let us know, and we'll do it for you. You guys have been listening to the Dump and Chase podcast. He's Andy. I'm Shane. Next week we'll have Rich back. And until next week, 18-7-0, baby. Let's go Islanders. I just deafened myself. I made that way too loud.
What?
All right. Normally, I would love to stay and hang out, but my grandpa's downstairs.
You know what? Go spend time with your grandpa.
Yeah, he
Go
just turned
spend
80.
time with Gramps.
Listen, you're getting up there. Be careful.
What? I said go spend time with Gramps. I'm being a nice guy. If you want me to be a jerk off, I could be a jerk off.
No, please don't. Be a nice guy. I like
No,
nice
go spend
Andy.
time with-
I don't want to
go
get
spend
mean emails tomorrow.
Go spend time with Gramps. I totally understand. This was a good show.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, watching, and we'll be back next week.
All right, Shane. Have a good later, man.
Later, guys.
Have a good night.
You too.